Imagine you just got your first real paycheck. You did the math yourself. 40 hours, $15 an hour, $600. You open your banking app. It says 431. You open it again. Still 431. Nobody warned you. Nobody explained it. And honestly, that is kind of the whole problem. So let's fix that right now. Taxes. That missing $169 has a name. Actually, it has several. Federal income tax, state tax, Social Security, Medicare. Welcome to the modern ritual of earning money and immediately handing some of it back. Here is the honest version of what taxes actually are. They are the price of living in a functioning society. Roads, schools, hospitals, fire departments. None of that runs on good intentions and positive vibes. The government collects a slice of what you earn to keep the whole thing running. Income tax hits the money you make. Sales tax hits the money you spend. Capital gains tax hits the money your investments made while you were sleeping. 3 different moments, 3 different slices. Then there's Social Security, which is less of a tax and more of the government saying, we don't trust you to save for retirement yourself, so we're going to do it for you. You pay in now, you draw out later. Medicare works similarly. You fund healthcare for older people today on the understanding that the system will return the favor when you need it. And yes, countries with higher tax rates generally have better infrastructure and longer life expectancies. Doesn't make the deductions any less painful, but that's what it is.
Banks. So you take what's left and put it in a bank. Smart move, but here is what most people picture happening. Your money goes into a secure room, sits inside a labeled box, and patiently waits for you to come back for it. Here's what is actually happening. The second you deposited that money, most of it left. The bank took roughly 90% of your deposit and lent it to someone financing a car, someone fixing their kitchen, someone whose business idea may or may not survive the next 12 months. They kept just enough behind to cover the people who walk in today needing cash. This is called fractional reserve banking. The bank is not a safe. It's a middleman. It borrows from you at a low interest rate and lends to others at a high one. That gap is the business model. You are the supply. Borrowers are the demand. The bank is the very expensive middle. Your money is still safe. The US government insures up to $250,000 per person, no matter what, but it is absolutely not sitting in a box with your name on it. It never was. Interest, which brings us to interest. Borrow $1,000 today. Pay back $1,200 next year. That extra $200, that is interest. It's the price tag on using money that isn't yours yet. Simple interest is clean. A flat percentage on what you borrowed. No surprises. Compound interest is a different animal entirely. It charges interest on your interest. Every unpaid dollar quietly grows a small family of its own. But flip that around. Invest money that earns compound returns, and suddenly time is doing the work, not you. $100 growing at 8% annually doesn't just add $8 every year. The base gets bigger. The returns get bigger. Then the returns on the returns get bigger. Now, here's something nobody explains cleanly enough. Your $50 bill is still $50. The number hasn't changed, but the amount of things it can buy has quietly gotten smaller. That is inflation. It's not dramatic. There's no announcement. It's just a slow, invisible erosion. Prices drift upward, purchasing power drifts downward, and most people don't notice until they're standing in a grocery store doing mental math they shouldn't have to do. What causes it? Sometimes too much money chasing too few things. Everyone has cash, but supply can't keep up, so sellers raise prices because they can. And sometimes people just expect prices to rise, so they spend faster, which drives prices up. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. 2% a year is considered normal, predictable, manageable. When it spikes past that, wages lag behind, savings quietly bleed out, and the government steps in by raising interest rates, making loans more expensive, slowing down spending, cooling the whole cycle down. It's a blunt instrument, but it usually works. Recessions. Every so often, though, something breaks. The economy doesn't just slow, it contracts. 2 consecutive quarters of decline, 6 months of things getting smaller, is what officially qualifies as a recession. Companies start cutting costs. Jobs disappear. People stop spending on anything that isn't absolutely necessary. And because everyone stops spending, businesses earn less, which triggers more cuts, which creates more fear, which causes less spending. It feeds itself. Think of the economy like a spinning top. Everything looks fine while it's spinning fast. But when the momentum slows, it wobbles. The wobble scares people. Scared people stop spending. And a top that isn't spinning doesn't stay upright for long. The causes vary. Rates too high for too long, a global shock, a financial system stretched past its limits. The recovery playbook is usually the same. Lower rates, inject stimulus,
Wait for confidence to come back. Recessions feel permanent when you're inside. They never are, but they do leave marks.
Credit scores. While the economy is doing all of that, there's a quiet number following you around personally. Your credit score, a 3-digit figure between 300 and 850 that tells every lender you'll ever meet whether they can trust you with their money. Below 580, and you're going to have a very uncomfortable conversation at the bank. Above 750, and doors open with noticeably less friction. 5 things build that number. Payment history, the biggest one. Do you pay on time? Credit utilization. How much of your available credit are you actually using? Credit age. How long have your accounts been open? Credit mix. Variety of accounts helps. And new applications. Too many in a short window looks desperate. Lenders notice. Here is the part that catches people off guard. You can have 0 debt, live completely within your means, never miss a single payment, and still have a terrible credit score because you have no credit history. The system doesn't reward being careful. It rewards being consistently trustworthy with borrowed money. That's the game. Learn the rules, then use them. Currency. Now, let's talk about the money itself. A banknote is a piece of paper. There is nothing physically special about it. Its value doesn't live in the material. It lives in the collective agreement that it means something. Every dollar functions because enough people believe it does. Bitcoin works the same way. Gold worked the same way for centuries. The asset isn't the thing. It's the shared belief in the thing. The government prints currency. Central banks regulate how much of it exists. Too much in circulation and inflation eats its value. Too little and the economy seizes up. The entire global financial system runs on trust and collective agreement, which is either very reassuring or deeply unsettled, depending on how long you sit. Investing. Given that inflation is quietly eroding the value of money sitting still, the logical response is to make your money move. That is investing. Instead of trading your time for money, you're trading money for more money, with the understanding that it carries risk. But historically, over long enough time horizons, it works. The main vehicles. Stocks give you partial ownership of a company and its future growth. Bonds let you loan money to a government or corporation in exchange for predictable interest. Funds bundle many assets together, so one bad bet doesn't wipe you out. Real estate puts land or property to work, generating rent or long-term appreciation. The real advantage isn't picking the right asset, it's time. Start early, stay consistent, and let compound growth do what it does. The market goes up, the market goes down. Over 30 years, it has historically only gone in one direction. The actual risk isn't losing money in a down year, it's never starting and letting inflation quietly steal your future. Value. Before you obsess over income, understand what drives it. Money flows toward wherever value is being created. A surgeon earns well because the service is genuinely irreplaceable, and people will pay almost anything for it. A luxury brand charges 5 times what the product technically costs because perception is part of the product. A content creator with a real audience has built something valuable because attention is scarce and companies will pay to access it. The formula is always the same. Figure out what you can do or make that other people need badly enough to pay. Then figure out how to deliver more of that without it costing you more time. Everything else follows from that.
Time. And finally, the one asset nobody can print more of, manufacture more of, or buy back once it's gone. Most people sell it in 1-hour blocks for a fixed wage. That works until it doesn't scale. The wealthiest people figured out how to make each hour increasingly valuable through skills that compound, systems that run without them, or assets that keep generating returns in the background. But the most underrated use of time isn't productivity. It's patience in investing. A modest contribution made consistently, given enough time, doesn't just add up. It multiplies, slowly at first, then faster than almost anyone expects. The people who retire wealthy didn't necessarily earn more than everyone else. They started early. They stayed in longer. They let the clock do what no strategy, no stock pick, and no market timing trick ever consistently delivers. The best financial decision you will ever make is not waiting for the perfect moment. There isn't one. The best moment was yesterday. The second best is right now.